Hello, good morning. First and foremost, let me let you know that in order to add to the accessibility of this event, closed captioning is being offered. You can see the CC icon in the bottom of your screen. Secondly, all throughout the session, speakers will be providing a visual description of themselves, and we think that will be very important for everybody to be able to participate and enjoy the session. Secondly, allow me to remind you that this session is being recorded. A recording will be shared with all attendees, so no need to take furious notes. The other thing I think it's important to let you know is that any questions, comments, concerns of a technical nature or related to the session, please use the Q&A function in the bottom of your screen. We will be responding to you directly as we hear your questions and your comments and your concerns. Today is an incredibly important and proud day for Business in the Community Ireland. So I have a favor to ask. Can you please help us have the biggest possible trending on social media? And can you please make hashtag Elevate Pledge #1 this morning, because it's all about inclusion and why it matters and why we need to really move the dial. So good morning, everybody. It is a pleasure for me to open the proceedings on this event. I'd like to welcome the more than 400 people that we have registered this morning. And for those of you who haven't engaged with us before, Business in the Community was set up 20 years ago. We're a movement for change in business. And we are all about a vision, which is very simple. It's about a low carbon, sustainable economy and an inclusive society where everyone thrives. Over the 20 years, we have been working extensively with more than 100 of our member companies around social inclusion. And today is a culmination of that work, of bringing together education and employment as fundamental pillars of inclusion, bringing people from the margins of society into the mainstream. 3 years ago, facing the climate crisis, we launched a low carbon pledge. It was a CEO commitment to make meaningful action on climate and to put climate action on the boardroom agenda. Today, we're doing the same with inclusion. There's no doubt that we have an inclusion and an inequality crisis in our country. COVID-19 has sadly exposed and exacerbated the societal divide we're living. And today, I am extremely pleased to launch the Business in the Community Ireland Elevate Pledge for an inclusive workplace. So, in order to go with the proceedings for the session we have today, I'm going to start delving into what the pledge is about. But let me first share with you what is the vision. The vision for Elevate, the Inclusive Workplace Pledge, is very simple again. It's about building an inclusive workforce that reflects all of our society starting now. And as one of my colleagues, Louise Murray, always says, this is about holding a mirror to ourselves as businesses, as business leaders, and asking, is our workforce and is our workplace reflective of society out there? But don't hear from me. I would like to start by sharing some perspectives from the workplace and listening to some of the challenges, the barriers, and the successes of people in the workplace in Ireland today. Thank you.
I arrived to Ireland with 12 years of Fortune 500 experience. And after I arrived here, my experience was not counted. It was not recognized by the jobs market far and wide in Ireland, nor by the corporates, nor by the hiring agents. So it was a big brick wall for me. One of the recruiters, in good faith, told me, why don't I change my name and make my name more adaptable for the Irish jobs market? I was very much eligible to work in Ireland 6 years ago. And things did not work out.
I speak Portuguese, I have a degree, I'm working in the civil service. But on the surface, if you see me walking down the street next to your job, you could, no bad intentions, make that assumption as well that I wouldn't be fit for the job, or I need an education. That's the assumption from just hearing those in accent.
One of the biggest barriers that I have found as a disabled woman entering the workplace, and that I would hear other people talking about, is that piece around attitude. And if you take the interview as an example, when I go into an interview, or when I have done in the past in particular situations, I would have to spend so long convincing the person that I am simply able. And that takes away from my time to really shine and show that I can not only meet the expectations of the job requirements, but I can exceed them, because I have to spend so long trying to explain that I can do X, Y, and Z with reasonable accommodations. I think the difference between a good employer and a great employer is the employer that's going to see you and they're not going to judge you, because they're just going to see your ability and your potential. And that is the most important thing.
For me, also an inclusive company is when you can sit down with your own manager and have your one-to-one where you can express, your needs, you can express your thoughts. They know you, and you feel that you can sit down with anyone, and you don't feel that you're less or more than anyone else in your company.
I started in '92 as a sales representative, and kind of moved up from there into management. It's at a client account that has grown over the years, and I've grown with it. I'm wheelchair bound. I'm physically disabled, but because the illness is starting from the bottom, I'm working up. My mental powers, or my mental acuity, is still pretty much there, and the company values it. I was very, very lucky to end up with a world-class customer with a very strong sense of CSR, and an employer with a very strong sense of CSR. They're very accommodating to my illness. They're very proud, I suppose, of the work that I do, and the fact that at a very advanced level of disability now, that I'm still capable of doing that work.
The real challenge for inclusiveness is when diversity has entered the organization. What becomes of it in terms of inclusiveness? How are these people, how are they represented in the hierarchy of the organization in terms of progression? Because what you see mostly is that migrants progress, especially Africans, we progress laterally. Most of the migrants that come to look for jobs here in Ireland, they are very, very qualified and very, very, good at what they do. Instead of just employing people from a homogeneous perspective, but when you spread it out, you have more opportunity. You have the privilege of engaging people from different places with different cultural intelligences from their different places, and they all come together in your organization as a melting point. The result of that is that you have more critical thinking, which gives you more results, and that is more profits for the organization. That is only an advantage if you give them inclusiveness. So you get profitability, you get more problem solving, you get more critical thinking, and a happier organization.
I think you will all agree that Enyina couldn't have described better the challenge of inclusion for any workplace today. Some of the voices that you heard in that clip were featured this morning in Morning Ireland, and I had the privilege of meeting Aditi, our first testimonial this morning, and she was talking about a hard brick wall, and thankfully Aditi is now working full-time, and in fact she is contracting with one of our member companies, which makes it even a more exciting outcome. And this was thanks to her participation in one of our inclusion initiatives, which is the EPIC program. And EPIC has been supporting migrants, refugees and asylum seekers for over 12 years. And we have 4,000 people placed in training and employment in the last 12 years. And that's pretty exciting. But anyway, let's move on, and now let's start to understand what is the Elevate Pledge, what are the challenges ahead, and what have we asked companies to do. So I'm going to ask, I'm going to need a bit of help in doing that. So I'm going to ask Harry Sinead and Ken to turn on their cameras and join me on the virtual platform this morning. So as I said, Harry, Sinead and Ken will help me unveil what this whole pledge is about. But as I said, as we started, we'll all do a visual description of us for those of you who cannot see us properly. So there you go. I might start if that's okay with everybody. I am seated on my office at home. I am wearing a suit. I haven't worn that one in a very long time, so it feels a bit uncomfortable, but there you go. And I probably would describe myself as white, I guess, and I have a short hair. So Harry, how would you describe yourself?
Thank you very much, Tomas. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this launch today. I would describe myself as a white cisgender male. For those of you who can see me, or you can see me from the chest up, I'm about 6'4". I'm sitting in my sitting room in front of a cream wall, and I have an oil painting entitled Conversations hanging behind me.
Super. Hello, Sinead. What can you describe yourself for us?
Good morning, Thomas. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, my name is Sinead Patton, and I'm a white female from Donegal. Maybe my accent may or may not give me away. I have brown hair and I wear glasses. And today I'm speaking to you all from my attic in Radoth in County Meath, which has been my office for the last 15 months and counting.
Super. Thanks so much, Sinead. And Ken, can you describe yourself?
Yeah, I'm a white male from Dublin, and I have short grey hair, and today I'm wearing a navy jumper, and I'm working from home today, and in the background there is a light coloured wall, and it's great to be here.
Thank you very much, Ken. And I should have added that I'm wearing an M&S suit, so there you go. It's all very much aligned. But anyway, let's go into the pledge, and I'm going to start with Harry. So Harry Goddard is the CEO of Deloitte, and Deloitte have joined supporting us as our knowledge partner, and Deloitte have conducted some research for us, which was released this morning. So Harry, what have you found during this research on putting diversity and inclusion in focus, and are there any key messages or headlines for this morning?
Thank you very much, Tomas. And I think in playing the role of the knowledge partner in this engagement, I think what it has really helped us to do is to take a topic that probably we all had a degree of familiarity with, but really put some data around it and give us some facts. And I think there are some great insights in the report. I'm sure you'll share them as we go through the conversation this morning. But some of them were quite revealing as to how inclusive we are. And I think for a country that prides itself with the Cape Míle Fáilte, and I think we do that incredibly well, there are things, and there are definitely areas where we could improve. I think what's really positive, and that's come through the work that we have done with the various member companies involved, is identified a range of initiatives that are very practical, which I think many organizations can take on, and which will find, I suppose, with the right leadership and support in place, will make a real impact in how we create a much more inclusive society and environment for all of our people. And I think that the second point I would make is how critically important it is for us as businesses to get advice and to work with organizations such as Business in the Community and others who have programs, and you referenced EPIC earlier, and there are others, to help us within our corporate environment put in place the right infrastructure and supports to support us in the change to become more inclusive, but also I think to help us in how we work with the various populations in our society. And I think it becomes even more important today that we don't allow the accident or the providence of somebody's birth determine their whole life outcome. That we create ways to ensure everybody has access to education and everybody has equal access to work. So really proud to be part of it, really proud for Deloitte to be able to provide its expertise to support this great initiative, and delighted to be able to be here on the day of its launch. Thank you very much, Tomas.
Thank you, Harry, and thanks to you and your team for engaging in this. And indeed, the research is available on our website, and we would urge everybody to download it. There's some stark facts and figures in terms of the situation of employment, unemployment, and underemployment, and some of the challenges ahead in terms of the measures that companies can undertake to get deeper and further into this initiative. So now I'm going to move over to Sinead. So Sinead Patton is the Chief Financial and Commercial Officer for Veolia in Ireland, and she's also the Regional Director for Veolia in Northern Ireland. And Sinead is one of the co-chairs of this very important and brave initiative. So Sinead, we have been working on this in Business in the Community for quite some time. Why do you think that now is the time to launch this pledge?
Yeah, no, thank you, Thomas. And as you can see from what Harry has said and from the Deloitte research, diversity and inclusion is a very important topic for us all. There is an overriding need for us all to take an important step towards becoming a more inclusive society. And I think we as organisations are in a unique position where we can facilitate a change in order to make a real difference. There's unintended barriers that are out there in order to become an inclusive employer in society, and we can help overcome them. And I think within many organisations today, Thomas, diversity and inclusion is becoming part of their business strategies, and it is becoming a higher priority. But it is key for organisations to take actions in order to achieve those diversity and inclusion strategic objectives, and not just to have it as a nice to have on their agenda. And so the other bit that is important is that, like, this is not just a role for HR, it's not a role for a diversity and inclusion champion. We all have a part to play in relation to this, and we must embrace the change. And some of this won't come naturally. Some of this we'll find ourselves outside of our comfort zone, but we have to challenge ourselves in order to make a lasting difference. Under the pledge, which I'm delighted to be part of and to take part today, we're asking companies to firstly document their diversity profile within their organizations. And we're starting small, just start off with your senior management teams. And then we're also asking companies to take one tangible action in order to embrace inclusion within their organizations. Like, ultimately what we want to ensure is that within the recruitment and the retention, that we recruit and retain diverse talent. Like, we've had fantastic companies have signed up. We've had over 45 companies have signed up to the pledge this morning. It's a fantastic achievement, one we're very excited about, and we've exceeded our initial target, but we mustn't stop there. And I suppose that's ultimately the point that I want to say. I want to encourage everyone, every organisation that's here this morning that haven't signed up, to do so, to help us achieve together our combined ambition of becoming a more inclusive employer that more accurately reflects Irish society today.
Thank you, Sinead. And indeed, also in our website this morning, you'll be able to download, you'll be able to see the companies, which we will reveal in a minute, but also the concrete specific actions that each of the signatories are going to be taking, and that we'll be reporting on in a year's time on the progress that it has had, and obviously in sharing that best practice, which I think it is the critical element. Thank you, Sinead. And now I'm going to move to Ken Scully. He is the head of trading and commercial operations of Marks and Spencer in Ireland. We're never tired of acknowledging Marks and Spencer was our first ever member company, and an organization that has been incredibly engaged across our education and employment initiatives, and quite an inspiration. And I know, Ken, you really value action more so than conversation when it comes to the whole diversity and inclusion agenda. So can I ask you, Ken, what do you think this initiative is going to enable? What is it going to empower in business?
Yeah, I suppose I should start off by saying that in Marks and Spencer, we genuinely know there's a strong business case for inclusion, and one of the speakers earlier referred to that. But fundamentally, we also know it's the right thing to do. We have to acknowledge that within society, there are certain groups of people that face significant barriers to employment. And we believe that being part of this Elevate program will help to create a more inclusive workforce and a better society. I think what being part of this group, what we're asking for is people just to take small steps into this space. There's plenty of information available, plenty of best practice within other companies that you can avail of. I think fundamentally it's creating a workforce that's inclusive for everybody, and everybody has an opportunity to join the workforce. And for us and for me, that's the fundamental reason of getting involved, and that's our hope.
That is critical, Ken. Thank you. And I think just to highlight the point about being in the footsteps and at the foothills of this journey ahead. So here you go. I am delighted to introduce you to the 45 initial signatories, and we know there will be more signatories, and we are delighted to see such a diverse range of sectors, sizes and industries represented. And we very much look forward in a year's time to seeing how these companies have engaged in their disclosure of data and in their specific actions. So I'm going to bring this section to a close. Thank once again Harry, Sinead and Ken for being part of this important launch this morning. And now I'm going to ask my colleague Linda O'Sullivan, who is one of the engineers of this great initiative, to take us through some of the lived experiences, the challenges of what we're trying to work around with this pledge. Linda, over to you. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Thomas. And I just have to say, it is just such a pleasure to be here today to launch Elevate Our Inclusive Workplace Pledge. As no doubt you can all imagine, there's been a significant amount of work that has gone into this across all of business in the community and across our membership network. I'm really looking forward to having a discussion now on inclusion from a number of different perspectives. And I'm very happy that I will be joined in that discussion by three fantastic contributors. So if I could invite Christy Edie-Moodia, Paul McKeown and Shay Walsh, excuse me, to just join me on screen. And I suppose just to follow on the visual descriptions, I'll start off with myself and then I might ask each of you to describe yourselves. So I am a white Irish woman. I have shoulder length brown hair. I'm of an age where I'm eligible to register but haven't yet received my vaccine. And this morning I'm wearing a black dress and I'm sitting in my attic also behind or in front of a white wall. So Christy, maybe I'd hand over to you for your description.
Thank you very much, Linda. I am a Black Nigerian Irish woman. I'm not sure about the eligibility for vaccine now, but I'm not sure they're considering me yet, but maybe very soon. I have a black and red hair, short hair at the moment, and I am wearing a blue combat dress, and I'm joining the conversation today from my improvised workspace in a little corner in my home. And my background is white.
Thank you, Christy. Shay, over to you.
Thanks, Linda. Yeah, Shay Walsh, and I'm a 52-year-old white male from Dublin. So I've been called for my vaccine on Friday, so I'm delighted and looking forward to that. I'm wearing a suit with a blue shirt. I've kind of brown eyes, and my hair is a little bit longer because I haven't quite managed to get to the barber yet, but I've kind of grey hair, and I'm sitting here in our offices here in Grand Canal Plaza with the grey background behind me.
Thanks, Shay. And Paul?
I'm a white male from inner city Dublin. I'm wearing a green jumper. I've red hair and a big red beard, and I'm sitting in my flat in Dublin 1, looking forward to this session.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paul. And Paul, some of our audience might remember you from a session we hosted back in October, where you shared some fascinating insights around your experiences in job seeking after you graduated. And I think it was one of the sessions last year that had the absolute biggest reaction, and in particular, people just were so interested to hear of your experiences. So I was absolutely delighted that you were able to come back today and join us when we're talking about tangible actions that employers can take on inclusion. So we heard you earlier on in the clip talking about stereotyping, and I suppose the tendency that we can all have to make assumptions or jump to the quick assessment. I know you've been an activist on socioeconomic status and looking to have that considered as one of the equality grounds. But maybe start us off just by telling us why you think it's important that employers explicitly recognise socioeconomic status when they talk about diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, so I'll just give you a bit of background to just the audience. Some audience here might be familiar just from speaking at a previous event, but just to kind of give a context to this situation as well for people that might not be familiar with the historical context of social class in Ireland also, is that I grew up in the inner city of Dublin, where there's been generational poverty. We had issues, say, with a lot of family members affected by the industrial schools. You have in Dublin 1 and Dublin 8, the majority of the prison demographic is consistently just the same from a cluster of streets of disadvantage. And when I was growing up as a kid, the Dublin Docklands, where my dad would have working as a labourer, and a lot of other people would have working on the docks, that was our identity, that was our type of work that people would have gone into and would have finished in school at a young age. Well, all that disappeared, and when the new development came into the Docklands, we had the Irish Financial Centre, all the big multinationals coming. And when I was a kid, the big selling point was that 10% of the jobs were going to go to people in the area. And we were sold that, and I remember people would come in, but it never materialised, and there was never any like tangible actions. There was nothing actually there or statutory footing and obligation to put that in. So the big frustrating thing, and I'm sure a lot of people that work in the Docklands, you'll see the segregation and the divide and the walls between the local community and a lot of the employers and the gated communities that a lot of the staff perhaps live in. And when I grew up as a kid and going into my teenage years, into my 20s as well, was that it was so frustrating and it made a lot of people in our community very angry that when the employers were talking about equality, they weren't talking about social economic status, and they were committing to a lot of areas, but they weren't committing, and it was banging in their face that you have this issue right in front of you that's historical, and it built up a lot of resentment. And that was why I got really, really involved in that. When you look at stuff, say, around gender, around race, nationality, disability, there's statutory obligations on employers and services because of the equality legislation. So it gives those tools, it gives those rights-based tools to challenge those issues. Through with the generation systemic issue going on with social class in the inner city, we couldn't go to employer and be like, yeah, you know, you need to be obligated to do this. You need to have a code of practice. If you're discriminating in a certain way, you know, people in this area, you can take a complaint. We were completely powerless to do that. So we were more kind of in a charity model, just begging, asking, please give us a job. We have people with qualifications. And it was never materialising. So that's why I got so passionate to actually advance this issue. And thankfully, just from years of just not even myself, just other people as well in the inner city, we've been pushing this. We have it into the programme for government. And it is looking perhaps in the year or two that it is going to be that it will make it a statutory obligation for employers. But the thing is that we always want that as the last resort. And another reason why I'm here today is that there's a lot of employers here who are very engaged and actually, you know, they want to do things out of good faith. And it's great that we've got to that stage. And an important point that I would make is that when we are doing equality, diversity and equality initiatives, it is vital that you don't leave out, particularly that the legislation is going to make it an obligation sooner in the next year or two. But particularly with the historical context in Ireland, especially in Dublin, around where a lot of the employers are, is that you've the highest concentration of segregation in the state, but it's on social economic class. And you have people that are coming from here that they want to work, but they can't get into any of the employers. And that stretches across all competencies. So that would be a thing that I would really stress, that when we are doing diversity and equality initiatives, that we include, we don't leave out social class, because it is creating a lot of tension in our community that it isn't factored in a lot of D&I initiatives.
I think it's right, Paul, and I think you're right in naming it, in that, you know, gender, ethnicity, ability are all, you know, we hear those terms very frequently, and often we don't hear about the social piece, and we do want to explore that. I suppose great that it's building traction there and getting into the programme for government, and I think that's something we'll all welcome at business and the community. And we can see it across the board, this rising interest and prioritisation in D&I. which is fantastic to see. And even just, we've named 45 companies today that have signed up. They represent an employee, a collective workforce of 100,000. So I think there's a great start here, and it is great to have that dialogue going about socioeconomic. But Shay, I might just bring you in there in terms of, we're talking about a great start. You were the first CEO to sign up when we put out our invitation. I think the invitation hadn't even left the building an hour when we got BT's commitment back. So clearly inclusion is important to you, it's important to BT. But what is it in particular about inclusion, and particularly about this Elevate pledge, that particularly resonated with you?
I think because the pledge is a public declaration, you know, I know that its intent is to get information and get action and traction. That's important, and that will come in time. But I think initially it's most important that companies stand up and say what they're for, and it's important that that we did that, and our employees are already reacting positively to it, and they feel a sense of pride that we're putting our name towards the Elevate pledge. So I suppose it's a public declaration of intent that we want a diverse, inclusive, and equitable workplace here. And you know, the case is proven. It's settled science, all the research you can look at. And it's intuitive. You know, an organization that is more diverse, more inclusive, and more equitable has employees that are more engaged. Therefore, those employees are happier in their work, and they're more engaged in doing their job. Therefore, they create better products or services, and customers get a better product and service. And therefore, the company delivers better results, and therefore it's a virtuous circle. So you know, it's a question of kind of like why wouldn't you sign up to the pledge rather than why would you? So it's really core to what we want to embed as our culture, and again, a kind of public declaration of what we stand for.
Yeah, that's great, Shay. And I think it's an important aspect of the pledge is that we ask that it is the CEO that signs up and makes that commitment, because that leadership piece is so critical. But I think Sinead encapsulated it perfectly earlier on when she mentioned that often it's considered that's for HR. D&I is for HR. So it is brilliant that we have a HR perspective. Also joining us this morning, I suppose at Business in the Community, we believe that everybody in the organisation has a role and a responsibility to play. But Christy, as the senior HR business partner with Mercury Engineering, I'd just love to hear your perspective on why Elevate is an important pledge.
Thanks very much, and Sinead, Linda, for the opportunity to be here. For me, and personally, and for Mercury, it's a very important pledge, because consciousness, like I always say, produces power. When you're conscious of something, you're intentional about it, you measure it, you're accountable to and for it, and then naturally it's going to lead to impact, and it's going to produce, you know, power, what we want. So signing up to this for us produces that consciousness. It helps us take a diagnostic view of what our current workforce is, the demographics, and then helps us identify the gaps, and then take meaningful, measurable action that we hold ourselves accountable for. And just like diversity and inclusion, it's not just in the people or the diversity of people that we bring in. It's in our policies, our culture, our everyday activity in the workspace. And when you are conscious of that, naturally it's going to feed into your relationships with people. It's going to feed into the programs that you have, making sure that you're providing, not just bringing in diverse workforce and ensuring representation, but when they do come in, how do you track them? How do you measure it? How do you ensure that there's psychological safety, they're happy to be at work, and there's a pathway for growth? You know, what is the pathway for growth for them? You know, not just coming in, but how do they get to middle management, you know, and ensuring that we have that diverse representation across the strata, across the whole organization. So that's why it's very important for us in Mercury, because we've done things before. but even being able to track them and measure it, see what's working, what's not working, where we need to improve on. I think that's really great that, you know, we sign up to these and we can all work together to achieve the goal.
Yeah, I think, and again, you encapsulated it perfectly there, Christy, in terms of that measurement and that accountability, and that's something that we're really, really aspiring towards with Elevate. As well as that kind of measurement and the data, we're encouraging companies to take an action and put that action into the public domain and then report back on it. So one of the actions that Mercury have signed up to is to increase female representation and development through the organization. So maybe you just tell us a little bit about some of the initiatives that you've started or you hope to introduce to address that.
Traditionally, like we know, construction industry and some techie sector, it's kind of hard to get a female gender representation just because they are not there. And if you go to UCD, for example, or any of the schools, you take a class of the engineers, how many female are there? Probably 4 or 5 in a class of maybe 100. And all of us companies, we go for graduate fairs and we are looking for just those 4 people. So I think we've got to change our strategy. And a lot of times we put out job ads, the job applications that come in, oh, these are the people who apply for it. But we need to go beyond the traditional recruitment methods. And I think is a call to action for all organizations. We need to go back to the schools. What is the curriculum like? How can we influence, change the narrative for girls? You know, what courses? In the past, you know, the guys would build and girls were giving dollies or, you know, something really feminine. So we need to go back to schools to start changing the mindset and to make construction, engineering, these roles really attractive for women and let them know that they can do it. And I suppose that's part of the things that is driving us in our organization. And some of the things we're doing is partnership with inner city schools. And that goes to what Paul was, you know, talking about earlier, because there is intersectionality in all of these things, even looking at the socioeconomic area, going to girls' schools in those areas, engaging with them at, you know, in the 5th year, in the 6th year, transition year. And even at that, it's too late, because I think we need to go to the primary schools and start sowing those seeds, you know, and that's something we're doing, creating those partnerships and then creating a pipeline where you can have female, you know, a pipeline to come into our apprenticeship program or any other apprenticeship program for that matter.
Yeah, I think, and actually just bringing you in, Shay, on this just as well, because obviously if we've construction and we've tech, 2 sectors that wouldn't be traditionally associated with strong female representation, I guess. But Shay, I imagine you'd echo what Christy is saying there, in that, like, whilst gender has been a focus for a long number of years, it's a hard nut to crack, and still a real challenge.
It is, yeah. And, you know, look, in the technology industry, our challenge is multiple. I mean, like, obviously, starting out with gender, a lot of the technical courses are predominantly male-dominated. IT, engineering. When I did engineering, there were 70 in the class, only 7 females. And that really hasn't changed much. And you know, I think Christy's got the spot on in terms of we have to get our students at the earliest entry point into education to ensure that we don't have any bias, that, you know, that the girls feel equally as capable of doing technical subjects as the boys. And, you know, in the BT Young Scientists and Technology exhibition, I suppose the good news there is that 60% of the entrants are female. But again, when it gets to 3rd level, that does drop, you know. So the females tend to pick subjects that are less focused on technology, and that's unfortunately something that needs to be addressed at the root cause at the earliest stage as possible.
Yeah, it's really complex, and I think it's astonishing when you think back. And I would have been at university around the same time as yourself, Shay, and like that, the numbers were very low. And to think that that hasn't moved on in the last few decades, so it's so complex, and there's like so much going on, and intersectionality, Christy, and the societal impact as well. But I think one of the things that strikes me, whatever facet of diversity that you're talking about, that access to opportunity is fundamental. And Paul, I'll bring you back in here, because I know you've had you've a lived experience of maybe being denied opportunity or facing a lot of barriers when you sought out opportunities that others maybe take for granted. And you might give us an example, just even of when you were in college and you were looking for an internship.
Yeah. So just a quick one there, just even like when I went back to education, I didn't have the leaving cert points. I didn't have a leaving cert, and I was able to get through a FETAC route, and that was able to get me into college. And when I was in college, a lot of the people, like pretty much 99% of everyone in my class, would have been from very privately educated, middle, upper class backgrounds. And everyone would have internships abroad or internships with a multinational or a very, like, quote unquote, like, exclusive employer. And I didn't really know how to do it. And I'd ask them, they'd be like, oh, you get an internal reference, or, if I know someone here and stuff. So when I finally did get an internship for the summer, I was on it back to education. So it's for people that have been unemployed or from disadvantaged backgrounds, to support them to go through while they're in college. And I thought, because every month you would need to show you're actively looking for work when you're not in college. And during the summer holidays, I went and showed, look, I have an internship for near enough to 2 months, but this internship is related to my degree, and when I finish, it's that extra thing that's going to get me foot in the door. So the social welfare officer just said to me, is that paid? And I was like, no. Yeah, well, if you're going on that, we're taking you off social welfare. So I couldn't go on it. So I was just kind of left trying to look for, a job in a spa, a job in a centre. And they're the little things. I'm sure when people look at applications, there's always things that just get someone over the line compared to someone else. It's always marginal differences. And that's another thing people need to think about. It's that, a lot of, particularly in the human rights area, internships abroad in Geneva to the UN are all unpaid. That's limited to a very privileged set of people, and in a similar context in Ireland and certain internships. So that was a big barrier for me. One barrier that I came across when I was trying to get into employment.
And it's a barrier at a starting point, and then that, because you didn't have that, then that creates additional barriers when you go to try and get onto graduate programs, and it's cumulative, I guess.
Yeah, and so I can explain just another bit about that. So traditionally, from the background I'd come from, I think it was when I was going in school, I think it was a 2% progression rate in the inner city into university. And when my football career over in Scotland wasn't working out, I came back and was faced with reality that I needed to get an education. So when I got the education and finally got the degree, I started getting familiarised with like graduate programs, and that there's certain ways of having to get into the graduate programs. Now I had the 2.1, I had the degree, I had the postgraduate, but when I was applying for all the jobs, it was very computerized. It was like you would go through stages, asking junior cert results, school, leaving cert results, put the name of the school, internal reference. But you can only give the internal reference if you know someone in the company. So I cheekily a few times what I done was I used to put, because me ma before when she was alive worked as a cleaner on some of the jobs, but I was just proving a point. It was like, how is the likes of myself or a traveller or an ethnic minority going to be able to fill those certain requirements if they have the degree or they have the competencies? And I couldn't get past the initial stages, and a year and a half went on, and it was very frustrating because all the people in my class in college were all fast tracking on these graduate programs, and I couldn't get my foot in the door on any of them. And that was a very frustrating thing. Or even, I remember getting through to even a phone interview, and it was a buddy system where I had to talk to people, and all the people on the team had to agree that I was perfect fit. Now, I was talking to a group of people all from very, nothing like, but they were all, from my perception, it all seemed from the same social circle, you know, privately educated, South Dublin. I don't want to be stereotyping, but that was my experience when I was deemed not a good fit for the team. You know, now, they were all barriers that I came across just trying to open the door.
A myriad of things, and listening to you describe your experience, it's so evident that opportunity is not equally distributed across society, and that's something that we explore in the research report that Harry spoke about earlier. And there's a few like pretty stark inequalities in there when you shine a spotlight on the unemployment figures and see just who is unemployed in Ireland. And I think one of them, and you mentioned the travelling community there, Paul, but that's, I think, how much they are excluded from the workforce is one of the starkest figures. So
well that's the thing I really stress as well. Like in the inner city, in a lot of the flat complexes, because in the 50s, 60s, there was an effort from the government at the time to assimilate a lot of travellers, and a lot of travellers, just in my experience, like in our flat complex that we made up of people, inner city Dubliners who have lived for generations, are members of the traveller community. And it's that intersectionality that, again, it's, you know, a traveller or someone from the inner city, they're not going to perhaps, you know, passing the junior cert, coming across, overcoming barriers to even get a leaving cert and getting a degree. That is shown that they are competent, have resilience. They're not going to have anyone they know in a company to give them an internal reference or work experience. And they're the barriers, I think. You know, I don't think anyone's intentionally doing this, but
that's it. I think that's it. That they're not. It's not intentional. It's just you haven't lived it, so you actually don't see it in some cases. I'm just conscious of time is flying along, and I feel like we're only scratching the surface. Christy, I might just ask you very quickly, because I know, just speaking of members of the travelling community, Mercury is one of the few companies that I've been talking to that has actually developed a recruitment drive for the travelling community. Would you just give us a quick sense of that?
Currently, we have different partnerships really with different organizations, and that's what I said earlier about moving outside of the traditional recruitment. If you want real representation in the organization, we need to find these people, because there are so many potentials and innovations lying with this pocket that we not intentionally, you know, ignore. It's like you said, Paul, it's not intentional. And so some of the things we're doing is partnering through our community benefits program with different and our different projects, and trying to remove some of the barriers there that Paul mentioned, make these people employable, teach them, coach them, train them, provide skills for them, and, you know, provide them access into the workplace. And then even while they're in the workplace, there is also that challenge for including them. So that means there's going to be mentoring needed, there's going to be coaching needed, because you're not just going to bring them in and leave them there. You know, they don't see a lot of people who look like them, so they need that extra support to enable them thrive in the organization. So we have that. We've currently recruited, not a lot, but I think it's a good start. We have 2 people in from that organization, and they're working out well, and the people in the team actually know that they're from the traveling community, and they're helping us even promote, you know, talk to other people about it, and hopefully through this and through this one person or 2 people, we can get more people in. So it is working if we actually go outside of the box.
Yeah, I think there's a few very interesting things in there, Christy. I think that piece around identity and feeling that you can bring your full identity to work, and so the fact that somebody has come in on a particular scheme but is very comfortable saying that they're a member of the travelling community. I know in the research, we had somebody tell us that a 57-year-old woman from the travelling community had just told the first person that she worked with, she was in a very successful job, that she was from the travelling community, having been there for years, because she didn't feel she could bring her identity to work. And I suppose that's something that employers have to navigate as well. Some people will be happy to be role models, other people absolutely won't want to do that. Another of the points that you made that I think is really interesting is around partnerships. And I think we cannot overstate the importance of partnerships, because it is really, that's really what makes the difference. And Shay, I'll just bring you in on that, because I know you're a strong advocate for partnerships, and certainly at Business in the Community, we'd have first-hand experience in that. You've been supporting our EPIC program for the last 12 years. We know that the benefit of business support and how that can impact on the job seekers. But a 12-year partnership, it's obviously working for BT too. So what is it that's so important about developing those strong partnerships?
Well, I think, and I think both Christian and Paul have kind of touched on it. And it's really, at a pragmatic level, it's to give our employees the volunteering opportunities to work with EPIC and to impart kind of IT knowledge and being familiar with Word and Excel and all the rest of presentations, to be able to then construct CVs and put the best foot forward. But it's also important in terms of creating a network of people. So what talent is equally distributed, but opportunity isn't, as the saying goes. And it's also to give people that confidence that they can reach out to a network of people. And it was interesting to hear earlier on when we talked to Will Goodbody this morning on the RT program, and the feedback being given was that networking is so important. So it's important for us to obviously offer the simple skills and give people the skill sets they need to help them move on and become more employable. But it's also then to create that network so that they can call upon for internships. And really what people are looking for is they're not looking for a handout, they're looking for a hand up. And it's really important. So we probably get as much out of the EPIC program as we give into it, because our employees are involved, just really get a lot out of it. And it it really does emphasize our culture and our drive to get involved in the community and do the best we can as an organization. Because in a company, you are in a somewhat controlled environment. You can kind of set the non-negotiable standards, and people can buy into that. And part of that thing is important is the volunteering we do, and that really helps in the EPIC program, but also giving people the access to the network that they need.
Yeah, it's so true. And I know as well, and we heard some of the voices from the EPIC program earlier on, but the benefit of actually bringing the business support into a program like that and just opening up that whole world of work is just it's kind of unquantifiable, really, to some extent. So look, we're hearing there's some good points, I think, being raised in terms of we're talking about early interventions, we're talking about disrupting maybe the traditional recruitment models, we're talking about making partnerships. And we're absolutely running out of time, but Paul, you probably have a checklist of things that you'd like to see employers do, or maybe not do, as the case may be. So we've a lot of employers listening today. So what would be your top piece of advice to employers that are serious about making inclusion a cornerstone of their workplace culture?
Cheers, Linda. So first, I think it's naming it. It's the way, if you go on to a lot of employers, I'm sure, including all that's here today, you'll see a diversity and equality pledge, but usually it's just on the 9 grounds. But adding that 10th ground on socioeconomic status, particularly if you're in a locality where there is really bad social exclusion that's historic, your corporate social responsibility, you can improve the lives of so many people overnight. Now, that's just naming things, that's having that overarching. And it'd be great to get that, to add that in before legislation is telling you to do it. It's just like, oh, this is something we have to do with legislation. But then secondly, and most importantly, is actually practically putting meat on the bones and delivering, taking actions like, collecting data to see in a year's time who's coming into who makes up our workforce, where is there gaps, so then we can target them and work with like Business in the Community to take from pool of people, because there is qualified applicants. And thirdly, the it's factoring in as well. People don't have to have a postgraduate degree or a degree to do a job. There's a lot of jobs that you build up from resilience or from life skills, just dealing with life, that can build up resilience, or particularly that you're competent to do the job. And I know LinkedIn in other countries has recognized that there wasn't any correlation with certain jobs. Now, there is jobs that you need a specific qualification, but certain jobs where it's
there's a lot of job descriptions that are written historically and have maybe unnecessary qualifications in there. I'm sorry to cut across you there, Paul. I'm just very conscious that we're running out of time. So I'd just like to maybe give Christy and Shay less than 30 seconds each. Top tip to employers today. So Shay, maybe go to you first, and then
yeah, very quickly. I think we need to deconstruct some of the traditional ways of recruiting and how we look at this measure. But I would say if we can look at diversity, inclusion, equity, and measure it as intently as we do our finances and construct a focus around that would be something I'd encourage every organisation to do, including ourselves.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And Christy, very quickly.
It's not enough to sign up to the pledge. What are those tasks? List them. What are those things you need to actually do on a day-by-day basis to make sure that your workforce is not only diverse, but truly inclusive and representative of the community that we are in? So if we can get to listing out those tasks, those actions, then we'll be on the right path.
Okay, I just thank you to the three of you so much, to Paul, to Shay, to Christy. It's just been fascinating, and we could talk all day on this topic. Just to say, we at Business in the Community are absolutely raring to go with our 45 first signatories, but also open and welcoming to every other employer within our membership network. And we look forward to coming back and reporting on our progress next year, and hopefully we'll have a great story to tell. So thank you all, and I'll hand over to Thomas to close us out.
Thanks so much, Linda, and thanks to Shay, Christy, and Paul for what was another fascinating conversation, and really on the clear journey ahead. I only have 3 minutes, so I'm going to probably say only 3 things. The first thing is, this is just the beginning of something that is ambitious and transformational. And it does require, as Shay was saying, deconstructing a lot of what we do. This is not only just about the outreach or the recruitment. This is about retaining talent. And this is a critical issue as we go and look at our future competitiveness, our rebuilding after this pandemic, and how we're going to thrive as a country, how we're going to keep on attracting top investment into this country. It's all going to be about how diverse and inclusive our workplaces are. So this is how important this is. This is about those investors that are running away from companies that are not diverse, from consumers that are more savvy and want to know more about the companies where they buy their products and services. And it's about attracting the best talent. And talented people don't want to work for companies that discriminate or that have a culture that it's negative towards inclusion. Time to wrap up and to say thank you to our signatories, of course, for taking the brave step of being the first early adopters, and hopefully there will be more, as Linda was saying. To thank all the speakers. I want to particularly thank all the various NGOs and organizations that are part of our ecosystem and that work with us. In particular, all the various funders, government funders of our programs, including the EPIC program and all our work on education. And finally, I want to give a very special thanks to 2 of my colleagues, Louise Murray and Linda O'Sullivan, who have been the absolute drivers and leaders of what we are launching today. And I'm incredibly proud of their work. And just to say, again, this is only the beginning. We certainly look forward to talking to more companies and to really making this happen and go beyond something that looks nice on the wall, but it's making real, lasting and meaningful change. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and thank you very much. Goodbye.